What's up, Momnation? And welcome back to another episode of Live and Learn. I'm super excited today because she's back, y'all. We've got Malka, the organized fairy, back. I know you all very much enjoyed her episode on laundry tips. I know I did because I love me some laundry, Malka. We learned that.
Oh, yes.
So just really quick for those who might be joining us, I know our audience members, the ones who have been around for a little while, they definitely know who you are. But for those who might just be joining us on this episode, can you give a real quickie synopsis of who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I'm Malka. I'm the organized fairy. I'm a wife, a mom, and a professional organizer. And I so enjoy helping moms experience the joy of motherhood without the stress of clutter.
Yes, so much yes to that. And I know everyone in the audience is like, yeah, tell me more, Malka.
Yes.
Because that's something that we deal with, don't we? And when we bring more people into our house, that's just more things that follow the people.
That's right. Yeah. The more people, we have more things. So when we have, children involved, then we're dealing with a lot of stuff. So the question is, how do we deal with that stuff and what do we do with it?
Exactly. So let's talk about that. Let's dive right in with our little people, because I know that a bunch of us, if not all of us, if we don't currently struggle, we did at one point in time with getting these little humans to pick up after themselves, keep their spaces organized and clean. It's the worst when, and can you tell from experience, like, look at my face, this is totally from experience, is when we walk in, I walk into my son's room and I have a little bit of time and I go ahead and I organize everything and get his closet all, up to speed, get everything folded and all of that. And I go in the next day and it looks like I was never there. So that can be really frustrating. So
yes, and you're not alone.
I didn't think so, but thank you. Tell us how you do it in your house. I want to hear all about how does the expert handle this? And I know you have more than just the one that I'm dealing with. So I'm extra excited to hear about how you do it with multiples.
Yeah, I mean, we started off with one. We had one at a time. So just want to put that out there. But I do want to say that it really all depends on how we're setting up our space. And when we want our kids to be successful at a certain skill, we have to teach them how to do that skill, but also set them up for success. So I want to backtrack a second and let's talk about how we could set them up for success. And I want to focus right now on the playroom as an example, and we could incorporate that into any really space that the kids use their things. So that could be their own bedroom, but for just the sake of the tips, we'll keep it to playroom focus. So kids really only need the amount of toys as their age. So let's say we're talking about a 5-year-old. That's 5 categories of toys, right? Now, any given 5-year-old is probably going to have much more than that. Now, you have a 10-year-old, so he's going to have more, and that's okay because as a kid, as they get older, their capabilities of being able to do multiple things or take care of their space, really, they're able to do more with that. But what happens to a kid who has more than what they're able to handle is they get really overwhelmed and they don't actually play with their toys. They end up taking out too much because there's so much there, and they also can't clean up after themselves. Like, think of your kitchen after, a day of cooking, right? Or just dinner. Let's just keep it simple, right? Just dinner. Mm-hmm. And we come back to our kitchen and there's just things out, the cabinets are open, and we're like, where do I even start? And that's what's going through a kid's head when we tell them go clean up. And so it basically means that they have too much stuff and they really just can't clean it up. They don't know how, they don't know where to start. So I always like to start with really going through their toys and making sure they only have age appropriate toys out, and also limiting the amount of toys that they have accessible to them at any given time. So maybe we have a closet in the playroom, or maybe we have a cabinet in the hallway that could work for, storing the extras, the toys that maybe, they like to pull out the Lego. So the Lego is like a special thing. We're going to take that out like when everything else is put away. We're not taking that out with everything else, right?
Gotcha.
I mentioned Lego because I know you have a 10-year-old boy, and my 10-year-old boy is heavy on the Legos. And so that's kind of where I like to start. So we're going to let go of everything that's not broken, missing pieces, and is age appropriate. And when we only have the activities or games out that they can play with easily and clean up easily, then cleanup is not hard. And when we want to take out that specialty thing, then we'll make sure all the other things are put away first before we take that out.
Good point. And I'm just going to side note you right here, but then I want to bring you back to the main point. But since you brought up Legos, it's the worst thing in the whole entire world to step on one of those
know.
things.
It's every mom's like, oh, what's the word? It's just the worst.
It is the worst. So what do you have any suggestions on how to organize those? Do you do like plastic bins, or because, my kid will get a set for Christmas or something, and it's like it needs to stay together if he wants to make that particular thing. And so he'll make that particular thing, and then he'll take it all apart and throw it into like the big giant bucket. So that particular thing will never be made again. But if you have a kid that wants to keep their themed Legos in place, like do you have a
So I think it depends on, there's always a system, but it also really depends on the kiddo and what they like and what works for them. I think for most kids, they enjoy building that thing and playing with it for a little while. And then that thing actually loses interest. And so that's why it joins. Like, don't fight the system. That's what he wants to do. So, and that's actually how my boys play with Lego as well. And I've tried a lot of different things. There are these big like mats that like you keep all the Lego in it and you pull it with a string. So they play with it on the mat. And then you like shove it under the bed or something like that.
Oh, cool.
It sounds cooler than it is. It was okay for a little while until I realized it wasn't really working. And so what I found with Lego, firstly, in my home, I don't really have a playroom, and I don't want Lego in my living room. So that's the one toy that my boys have in their room. And what I found works is I have 2 under the bed bins. So they're kind of like long and they fit under there. And I have one that's labeled, like loose. I don't remember what I called it, but like loose Lego, just like Lego pieces. And then another one built Lego. And because I don't want their Lego out all the time, they have a place to put their built Lego in this bin under the bed. And I don't put lids on these containers. So it's easy for them to pull out, play with it, and also clean up at the end of the day.
Right. And if they've got something that's half built or whatever, it'll still stay in the bin because you don't have a lid. Gotcha.
Yeah. And back to what you were saying before about like not rebuilding what the set, like it's okay because that's where their imagination comes in. They build incredible things. They don't need instructions. They just set up their own little city and world. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. That was helpful. So now I'm going to bring you back to cleaning up. And I love what you said about, because adults totally feel it too. I love what you said about not knowing where to begin when they're cleaning up. So if you say, hey, go clean up the playroom, and they're like, freeze frame, right?
Yeah.
What do you have any suggestions on a way to guide them into making that more of a step-by-step process so that it can be completed?
Yeah. So I have to say, like, cleanup is probably not their most favorite thing to do, but it has to happen, right? Yeah. So if we know we want our kids to clean up the playroom, maybe we wanted them to clean up and they went on to another activity and we have to come back to it, right? So I always like to give them as much warning as possible to be like, okay, you guys went swimming before we cleaned up. So when we come back in from the pool, we're actually just going to pause. We're all going to help clean up the playroom, and then we'll go like eat dinner or something like that, right? So just kind of giving them that and let's say they're in middle of playing and we'll be like, hey, in 5 minutes, we have to clean up because then it's dinner and bedtime. So just kind of starting with that. So there's a couple of things to do with cleaning up. One of the things I like to do is give the kid, like if it's one kid, or maybe it's a kid and his friend, or multiple siblings, give each kid a different toy to clean up. So that way they're not noticing everything. They're just noticing the one thing that they have to clean up. So, hey, Izzy, go clean up. You're going to be in charge of cleaning up the magnetiles. All Izzy notices are magnetiles, and he can spot them with all the little people and animals. So that's something that really, really works. And we could do it one at a time. Like we're going to start with the magnetiles, and then we're going to go on to the blocks or the vehicles or things like that. And then the next thing I like to do is put on a timer. We'll be like, hey, we're all doing this together. Even if some of us didn't play, I'll do this a lot. Like everyone is just helping. I have older kids that are not playing with the little kids' toys, but sometimes it just gets to be a lot. And so we all join in together. I'm putting on a timer for 10 minutes and let's see what we could do in 10 minutes. And there's like this energy and this rush and this like, yeah, and everyone's working together. And I'll even get like my baby, my 2-year-old, to like work with like an older sibling, so she's involved too, because they're never too young to get to be a part of that process.
And I love creating that habit early on, right?
Yes,
because
they're so capable.
Yeah,
they
and
really
that's gonna last.
Yeah.
And the more, I mean, I don't know, you tell me, you have more kids than I do, but I feel like the more we can help them figure out these basics like organization and all of that, then the easier, the more complex things become, right, as they get older.
Exactly. As they start to live more independently, maybe they're going off to camp, overnight camp. That might be step one, or even sleepovers at a friend and not lose all their stuff, right? It's like small things that we're giving them skills for, and we don't realize that like they actually need this. You know, after when I graduated high school, I spent a year in Israel, and I had friends, we were 18, 19 years old, and I had friends that couldn't put up a load of laundry, and there was no mom there to do it for them. So some girls would just hire their friends out because that's what they were used to, someone else just doing it for them.
Yeah.
And these are basic life skills. Like we don't know what's going to be. Maybe we're going to struggle financially when we start out in life and not able to hire people out. So if we could teach our kids, if we could teach them these skills from a young age, really we're just setting them up to be good adults.
I agree completely. So now that you brought up laundry, can we just talk?
I
know we talked about that last time, but here's another thing that I struggle with is cleaning up the laundry. So my baby, it doesn't matter. I can ask him 400 times a day, and I still will go into his bathroom, and after his shower, clothes are on the floor along with the wet towel.
Oh,
and every day, I know, and every day I'm like, here's your hook. You put your towel on your hook so it dries. Like it's not going to dry in a ball on the floor. And then you pick up your school clothes and you bring them. His hamper's literally like 4 feet away.
Yeah.
You know, but he just has a hard time. I don't.
Yeah. So some kids just struggle a little bit with it, a little bit more than others. And that's okay. The same with cleanup. There are going to be some kids, like even with my kids, the way I raise them, I could see some of them, it just comes more naturally and they are just on the ball and take care of their things. And some of them just struggle a little more. So my 6-year-old, he always leaves his towel on the floor. And usually his clothes are also on the floor. And so I come in his room and either I'll say something like, I noticed that your clothes are still on the floor. I wonder where they're supposed to go. And this is like when I'm already like, we're going into bed, you know, and I'm like, really? Like he took a shower an hour ago. But I also started doing this thing and it's a little bit more playful. And so I think it's helpful because it doesn't make them feel bad for being a little bit more forgetful. And I walk in his room and I'm like, I spy with my little eye. And he like zooms in and like picks up his towel and goes and hangs it up. Because the first time I said it, I was like, somebody's towel on the floor. And so he like knows already when I start to say that, meaning he's not doing it on purpose to be disrespectful or to be messy on purpose. He literally is just a little bit more forgetful. And he's a really like I don't want to say wild, but like high energy kid that's going from one thing to the next very quickly. And his brain just doesn't slow down enough to like, he usually, and when your kid is successful and they do it on their own, make the biggest deal about that. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
You picked up your towel and it wasn't in a ball on the floor. And now it's going to dry really nicely. And you could use it again tomorrow night without me doing extra loads of laundry. Thank you.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that advice. Thank you. Similar question, or same question, really, but toward kitchen stuff, like picking up after breakfast dishes, lunch. Well, if they're home, obviously, they're at school probably, or some people's kids are at school during lunch, but dinner dishes. Like, what is first of all, do you have that in place with your kiddos? Do they do that?
Like cleaning up after themselves?
Yes.
Yeah, they're supposed to. It doesn't always happen perfectly. Morning is like a little bit of a rush, and sometimes we need some reminders in place. Where I have something more in place is for dinner. We have like chores, and so the kids are home for breakfast, and I'll try to remind them like, hey, like let's put the cereal away or this, but really like after dinner is when there's like much more going on. And so I'll have chores in place where there's one kid who's setting the table and one kid who's clearing the table and another kid who's, wiping down the counters and sweeping the floor. So that way we are all a little bit more involved.
I love that. Now, I have a lot of questions about this. So what age did you start with that?
I mean, I'm trying to, I don't know exactly because my oldest is 15 now. So, and she's always been like extremely, extremely helpful and hands-on. But my 6-year-old, like my 2-year-old doesn't do anything really. It's more like, oh, let's throw that in the garbage instead of dropping it on the floor, Yeah. But my 6-year-old, like he likes to set the table. And so I'm like, hey, if you don't have to clear the table, if you set the table. I kind of use that with him because he needs that. So he's like, okay, I'll set it. But he's been doing it for a couple of years. He brings out placemats and plates and forks, and it's nothing fancy. It's nothing, but it's just like he's capable of doing it. And it's a way that we're showing and teaching him that we all work together to make this happen.
I love that. My kiddo loves to set the table as well. Yeah. He's a little decorator, so he will get all fancy and he'll do the napkins in our cups and things like that. Like super cute. Yeah, he loves that. And he's been doing that for a while.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like clearing up after each other could just mean like, hey, you're going to make sure to clear all the plates, throw the food in the garbage and put the plates in the sink. Or if it's, disposable, we're just going to clear the plates and throw them in the garbage. And that way you can focus on maybe putting the food away and that stuff and washing dishes or loading the dishwasher, right? A 10-year-old can load the dishwasher. Mm-hmm. That can be a job too. And maybe it's not an everyday job. Maybe it's just 3 days a week. Mm-hmm. So figuring out what might work for your family. So that way I actually have a friend who did something that like after dinner, everyone cleaned up from dinner together. No one went off to do anything else until dinner was completely cleaned up from. Because it's hard to come back, an hour or two later and it's a mess and you're that much more tired and you just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. And the food's now dried and stuck onto things. So it makes it even worse.
Exactly.
Totally.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you use checklists with your kids?
In what way?
For chores or for cleanup or anything that has to do with that?
Not really. I'm not going to say it's not a good thing because everyone should do what works for them. And if in someone's family checklists really work, like I said, some of my kids are a little bit more like on top of their things than others. And so for the most part, I don't feel like I need it. But if that works for someone, like go for it. If a kid is, but I do have chore charts and they're visuals and there's pictures as well as words. And so I like to have that out for the kids to see and remind them.
I love that. Can you explain a little further about where you got your chore chart? Did you make that or like what's on there?
I made it and it's mostly for the morning routine and the evening routine. And so it's just that reminder of what we have to do. If there's like a time, I like to use like 7:30 as the time that they have to be in the kitchen. So all the things before that are before the 7:30, like making your bed and brushing your teeth and getting dressed. And then 7:30 when we're in the kitchen, we're eating breakfast and then finishing to put, last minute touches on our lunch, packing up our backpack, and off we go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like what our morning routine looks like. And our evening routine is making sure that our homework is done and in our backpack, and then doing all the, bedtime prep. So shower, brush teeth, and all of that.
Mm-hmm. What we have a similar setup that you just described. And one thing that we found that needs to be on that afternoon schedule or that nighttime schedule is for my son to take his lunchbox out of his backpack and empty whatever might be in it.
Yeah.
Because you just want to do that on a Monday after it's been sitting there since Friday afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't have that on the chart, but I have set it up where I have a spot in my kitchen that's where the water bottles and lunch boxes go.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll still find something like an old fruit that they didn't eat or like a cheese stick. And I'm like, guys, really? Really?
Yeah.
But they're kids and it's going to happen and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I love that you just said that because I feel like as moms, we need to remind ourselves of that 1,000 times a day. Like, they're kids. It's okay. Is this really a big deal? Does this really matter? Like, they're learning. They haven't lived as much life as, can you tell I run this tape? They haven't lived as much life as you have. They don't have the experience you have.
Make it as like a ringtone or something.
Exactly. The things I tell myself. So I know that I brought you a bit off track than where you might have been going in the beginning. Bless you. Is there anything else? And you can come back. Okay. I in fact, love to have you come back. So if it's a whole other show, then we could do that later. But is there anything else that you wanted to add today to this topic that we didn't get to?
So our original topic was how to teach kids how to clean up after themselves. And so I think we did quite a bit. There are a couple of things that, if it's okay to add to it, I want to make sure that we don't like over categorize our toys, because we're thinking about how kids are going to clean up. And if we have bins that are super duper like, oh, we're going to put animals in here and people in here, and then vehicles in here, or cars and trains. I keep all the vehicles together. I keep all the little people and animals together. And maybe I'll separate out, magnetiles will have their own because it's their own category, but it just helps them really be able to clean up after themselves when it's less work, less thinking that they have to do. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. I even set things up like pantries like that for my clients. Like, we could make a snack bin, or we could make a sweet and a salty bin, and a this bin and a that bin, right? Like, we want to make it as easy for us as possible, because if we don't need more work. Our kids don't need more work. Let's just make it super easy. I also like to label the bins. So for like toddlers, we might add a picture to the label, so that way they can identify what should go in that bin based off of the picture. And for older kids, like if there's multiple children in the family, we could do pictures and words, and that works. And I think, just to end off, I think that kids really, they follow by example. When they see us, sometimes we have these expectations on our kids without really practicing those things ourselves, maybe because we don't have those skills yet, which is also okay. But if we show that we're putting in the effort to clean up after ourselves in our own spaces, they're going to be okay getting on board too, because they see mom doing it and they're following her lead. And just like repetition, like just keep enforcing it, keep helping them at the beginning when you're setting a new system in place. And then before you know it, they're going to be able to do it on their own.
I agree with that so much. And I'm glad that you said that, because I can imagine it would be very confusing for, let's say, for instance, we're talking about a closet. Hey, let's keep this closet organized, kiddo. And, this goes here, that goes there, that goes there. And then they walk into my closet and it's completely blown to pieces. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so I think that's a really important point to hang on. That's like, hey, you're the biggest example of what you're looking for.
Exactly. Yep.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It's crazy that it's like almost been a half an hour we've been
I
talking.
know.
This
I
happens
know.
to us every time.
I know. Well, that just means that we'll have to pick right back up.
Yes, yes, I would love that. We would love to have you back. For those that would like to get in touch with you, obviously, guys, she is a professional organizer. So, like she mentioned, she helps clients organize their kitchens, pantries, entire households, garages, all the things, right, Malka?
All the things. Yes. All the spaces within the home.
Do you do digital organizing?
No.
No, she's like,
I'm sure there are people that do.
because that tends to be a spot in, like, these days, like obviously decades ago it wasn't a thing, but these
Right.
days that tends to be an area of stress, that I have found just in talking with adults over the course of the years, months, and days, that they get real stressed out about when they open up their email and there's
There's so
4,500
much.
emails in there.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
talk to me about Google Drives right now. Oh my goodness. I
Yeah,
can
it's
use a digital organizer. So when
right.
I find one, I'll let you know.
Awesome. We'll try them out together, because Google Drive is definitely a thing. I just forget about what I have on there, and all of a sudden it says your storage is full. What?
Yeah. And you're like, what do I even have? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, how can our audience get in touch with you if they would like to consult, if they would like to hire you, ask you some questions, all that kind of good juicy
Absolutely.
stuff?
Yeah. I love when, anyone comes and interacts with me. So I'm the Organized Fairy. My website is theorganizedfairy.com. I'm also on Instagram, and you can message me there. You can message me through my website, and I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being with us. I love talking to you, but I also find your information to be so valuable and to the point. So thank you for your amazing communication presentation skills, because they definitely help.
Thanks. This was
All right, guys,
awesome.
if you want to check out our previous episode with Malka, we talked all about laundry. Hop on over to our YouTube channel. You will look for the playlist there that is Live and Learn. You will see her. She is just a few episodes deep, not really very far. There are a few other episodes there as well that I'd love for you to check out while you're there. And that handle is at Momnation USA on YouTube. On your favorite podcast platform, just do a quick search for Momnation Talk Radio. There you will find us as well. And I hope that you have a wonderful day, Malka. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.